Hey everybody, welcome to the Ground Effect podcast, where we dive into the heart of Formula One, bringing you the latest news, insider analysis, and sharing our thoughts on the motorsport we love. So come and join us, G and Mick, as we look forward to what promises to be an exciting 2025 Formula One season. Welcome again, race week. Bahrain. Looking forward to it. Hope we get an exciting race as opposed to the dour affair that we had last week at the Japanese Grand Prix. Here with me again is Mick. How's everything going, mate?
Good, mate. Looking forward to another race weekend. I'm sure this weekend is going to be much better than the fizzle we saw last weekend.
Well, let's hope. Today we have a few things to go over. A little bit of news that has come out in the Formula One world, like it always does, is Perez, possible return. Looks like there's some in-depth conversation going on there with Cadillac, and also a possible return to the African continent, Formula One. We haven't seen one since 1993 in South Africa, and Kyalami looks like they are looking to bring another street circuit, however this time in Cape Town by 2027.
Yeah, so I think the discussions are ongoing at the moment. I think a decision will be made by the end of this month. At the moment, I think it's a toss-up between Kyalami and or the street circuit. Myself personally, having driven around Kyalami in the sim, I'd like to see Kyalami back. I think it's a really good circuit, and I think the drivers would probably prefer that over a street circuit. We've got enough street circuits on the calendar now, so I think a proper race circuit would be the way to go.
Yeah, I agree with you. We've got plenty of street circuits happening. Obviously, the Kyalami track that we have, the modern version is a lot different to what was raced back in 1993, which was won by Alain Prost. It's sort of a little bit forgotten because, even before the show, we knew the Kyalami was on the calendar. And I said to you, when was the last race in Kyalami? And you're like, oh man, early 80s.
Yeah.
Just sort of, fades from the memory. But anyway, moving on to what we're all here for, race week, Bahrain. A few things to cover. Now, obviously, Mclaren will want to make right this weekend. And, will we see them come with a more aggressive strategy? We've got drivers under the pump, like always, and we've got a few teams bringing some new upgrades, as well as 5 rooks in for FP1.
Yeah, so the rookies are interesting. We have Dino Beganovic replacing Charles Leclerc at Ferrari, Frederick Vesti in for George Russell at Mercedes, Luke Browning replacing Carlos Sainz and Williams, Felipe Drugovich in for Alonso at Aston, and Hirakawa is replacing Ollie Behrman at Haas.
So Hirakawa's just done the quick swap over. I mean, last week he was Alpine, wasn't it? In for Doohan, and then this week, brand new team.
Yeah, so I think he's signed now as a reserve driver for Haas, obviously with his WEC connections with Toyota, and obviously Toyota having the connection with Haas was he obviously impressed Haas, and they decided to jump on him and make him a reserve driver for the rest of 2025.
Yeah, well, he did pretty good in the FP1 that he had in Japan. Again, you're going to get compared to your teammate, which was Gasly at the time. So I think he was ahead of Gasly, wasn't he, in FP1?
Yeah, I think you're right. I think he was ahead of Gasly.
And I think one of the rookies there, one with a lot to prove, I would say, is Drugovich, because, he's very highly rated. How much longer does Alonso have in that car?
Yeah, well, again, that whole Aston situation is quite interesting because apparently when Honda takes over as the engine manufacturer, apparently Honda will have quite a big say in who their drivers are. There's massive raps. A lot of the drivers reckon Drugovich is a gun and he should be in Formula One. Like most of these guys, it's an interview of sorts to show what they can do. Yeah,
well, we've touched on Aston before. Alonso, there's obviously speculation, or, there's a big chance that this is his final season, or maybe one more in the book. And then you got to think about Lance Stroll. Yes, we know he's the son of the owner, and last year he had a pretty disappointing season. First couple of races this year he hadn't been too bad, but last race in Japan he was absolutely nowhere. So, you kind of think if he keeps up, if he doesn't have a great season, it's a tough one, man. Is Stroll going to be there for next year?
If the rumors are true and Lawrence is looking to sell his stake in the team, then what happens? Do they get rid of Stroll? Then obviously Honda having their say on who their drivers should be, because you would imagine they're going to try and target Max.
Yeah, especially with Adrian Newey there now.
Yeah, I mean, you'd be stupid not to, right? If there's a way you can get him, no matter how much it costs, you've got to get him in the car, right?
Yep.
But if you're Alonso, you'd want to stick around till at least the end of 2026 with the new car?
Well, exactly, because, I mean, you've got the most successful car designer there, obviously with all intentions of bringing an absolute stonking car for 2026. So, yeah, I mean, if you're Alonso, I mean, imagine he does retire and then Aston's the fast.
Car comes out and wins the championship with Stroll the next year.
I mean, it's just like, yeah, when you think of Alonso's journey, how he's sort of bounced from teams and it's just he sort of bounces to a team and then they're just really uncompetitive. He leaves and, I don't know, he seems to pick some bad moments of changing teams, but hindsight is easy to look at in that aspect. Any of the other rookies that they're bringing in for FP1 interest you, or do you think they're just sort of filling in essentially the quota?
Yeah, I think it's just right now it's just the quota, because now I think they have to do 4 FP1 sessions as opposed to, I think it used to be 2 last year. So they've changed that now. So they need to do 4 sessions. So I think, they come to a circuit where they've done the testing. So they have data to compare. So it's not a massive ordeal to swap a driver out. Maybe Browning for Carlos, you'd think, with Carlos's struggles in the Williams at the moment, could really do with the extra seat time as opposed to Albon.
Yeah, true.
Same with Hirakawa with Behrman, but obviously it seems like so far Behrman, minus his mistakes in Australia, after Japan, seems like he has a better handle on the car than Ocon.
Yeah, we touched on Behrman. I mean, you could probably say he's made a few mistakes here and there in the races that he's had. He's showing like absolute outright speed. And, it just comes with experience. I think he becomes more consistent. Yeah, he's definitely one to watch for the future.
What about McLaren? Do you think they can bounce back?
Well, they're going to need to do something. Look, I don't know how true it was. There was a picture of Mark Webber talking to Zach Brown, apparently after the race in Suzuka. And I mean, they quoted that he was having an argument with him. Who knows what was really going on? But I'm sure if there was something said, I'm pretty sure he was in the air suggesting that a driver swap that should have been made. I just think McLaren need to be more aggressive. I mean, they've got the fastest car on the grid. I just think they can afford to be more aggressive.
Yeah, exactly. You look at Red Bull and you look at Mercedes' golden era, they were always willing to take the risk to win the race, right? And it seems like McLaren aren't willing to do that. They're just playing it safe. When you've got Max nipping at your heels, I don't think you can afford to play it safe, because you can't guarantee, like we saw last Saturday, that McLaren are going to be on the front row of the grid. Because if they don't get it right on Saturday and Max gets it right on a Saturday and he starts from the front row, he's going to be so hard to beat. And especially, you had Vasseur come out and say that this could possibly be a qualifying championship. So if that's the case, you can't afford to have bad Saturdays. You need to be there. And if you're not going to be on the front row, then you need to be aggressive. Otherwise, Red Bull are going to eat you up every day of the week. Why? Because they've done it year after year after year. They know how to win the championships. They know what it takes. They know when to pull a trigger on a risk and when not to pull a trigger on a risk. And I think McLaren can't afford this early to play it safe.
Yeah, I agree. I think the tricky thing they have is they don't have that designated number one driver policy. So when you look at those golden eras of Mercedes, Hamilton was clearly the number one over Bottas. And then when you look at Red Bull, Max, of course. So it's like they're obviously trying to keep both drivers happy and not show favoritism. But I mean, it could have been so simple just to be like, Lando, Oscar's faster here, let him pass. Let him have a crack at Max, and if you can't get him, we swap back. I mean, it's pretty straightforward.
They had the big enough gap to Leclerc in fourth. There was no risk at all. Oscar could have parked other side of 130R, hopped out of the car, had a cup of tea, got back in, and still finished third. You know what I mean? There was no risk involved. Yeah. And he clearly said, look, I think I can go get Max. But they obviously didn't want to upset Lando.
It's a tricky one because, I mean, if you look back at history with, I think, no clear number one drivers of the team, it doesn't work too well. But let's see. I mean, they have an opportunity now to right that wrong. And I believe you'll start to see McLaren become a little bit more aggressive, and I think they'll adapt. I mean, they have to adapt. They're just going to have to adapt if they want to have at least, I think, a driver to win the World Drivers' Championship as well as constructors. Look, still early days, still a lot to play for.
Well, you would imagine Bahrain, with the hotter temperatures, the more abrasive circuit, probably going to have... Last year was a two-stop, I think. It was a two-stop race, so you would imagine this year will be a two-stopper. would probably favour McLaren, as they seem to look after their tyres a little bit more than Red Bull, unless Red Bull have managed to fix those issues. So I'm expecting McLaren to definitely be up there.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, they were just here just recently, obviously testing, and they look like the team to beat. Of course, testing is not the full picture, of course, but yeah, I mean, we expect them to be favourites to win the race. Speaking of Bahrain, it's a good opportunity for a lot of teams to bring their upgrades, because I guess they have data, or at least some sort of comparison that they can relate to. What do we got on the cards for team upgrades?
Yeah, so like you mentioned, a lot of teams I think were waiting for Bahrain to bring those upgrades. So with Ferrari, the reports are they're bringing a new spec rear suspension springs, a new floor. McLaren are bringing an updated floor. Mercedes are bringing an updated floor and a new front wing. Racing Bulls are bringing a second spec floor.
So it looks like this weekend's going to be a big one for the engineers.
Yeah, basically. So that's the reports that are coming out at the moment. That's all we have with the teams bringing the upgrades. The biggest one is Ferrari. Are they going to get on top of those issues that they have with the rear of the car? Because in testing, they didn't really have those issues. And I think the biggest thing with the floor is the ride height issues. Bringing the springs, I think, to try and stiffen up the rear of the car so they can run that car a little bit lower.
Of the top four teams, they're definitely the team that needs to bring some type of improvement. You know, we've heard Hamilton sort of complaining about the car and the performance, and you know, as I've mentioned before, he didn't sign that big contract to be battling for like P6s and P7s, etc. So naturally, they've got data to compare it to from the test. Now, obviously, conditions will be a little bit different, of course.
Well, Ferrari can't really waste any more time, because it's going to get to a point where they're going to be out of the race for both championships. And then what do? Do you just scrap 2025, focus on 2026? Plus, there's also rumours there's a bit of a split on direction of development and setup between both drivers. You know, Leclerc wants to obviously set up and develop the car around his driving style, and vice versa with Lewis. You know, again, isn't ideal for car development when you've got drivers wanting to go in two different directions.
Yeah, definitely. And that was always going to be a little bit of the risk, I think, with Lewis going to Ferrari, is that Mercedes was his team, and it pretty much was his team from the get-go. Now he's come into a team where Charles is very well established, and yeah, it's going to be a sort of tricky synergy there to get them both on the same page, because Hamilton still, in his mind, thinks he's number one, and then obviously Leclerc's going to think he's number one. So tricky days at Ferrari, but I'm sure they'll figure it out.
Well, they have to. China really hurt them with the points that they lost on the Sunday with the double DQ, so they've got to try and make ground up quickly before it's too late.
Yeah, exactly. Now, speaking of other drivers under the pump. Now, the pressure always builds. It doesn't matter what part of the season we're in. There's always a few drivers that have failed to deliver on expectations or have had a few bad races. I know we're still early days into the season, but who needs to show they belong?
I mean, the biggest one, the one with the most noise, obviously is Doohan, which is going to be interesting if he's carrying that injury. You know, that's definitely going to hamper his performance, whether he likes to admit it or not. He needs a strong weekend now. Absolutely no mistakes this weekend. I think that's his biggest priority. Just clean weekend, FP1, FP2, FP3, you know, build up for qualifying, decent qualifying. And like we've mentioned, you know, he's been pretty close to Gasly, so I don't think the pace is an issue. I think he just needs literally a weekend with not one mistake, not one locked brake and running wide. He just needs a solid, clean weekend.
Yeah, well, the drums are beating, aren't they? Because we've had Colapinto doing some testing over the weekend as well. And so clearly, you know, they're giving him seat time. And I mean, it makes sense. You want to give your reserve drivers time in the car. But yeah, the drums are beating pretty loud for a replacement there. But yeah, I agree. I mean, Doohan's pace in relation to Gasly has been pretty good, but it's just, you know, the mistakes and the consistency. So what you'll probably find is he has an absolute great weekend this week, and old Flavio still puts a sword through him and replaces him for the following race in Saudi.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think we all kind of know it's going to happen at some point. It's not a matter of if, but a matter of when. I think you mentioned it last episode. He needs to show that he deserves to be in Formula One in a team, whether it's Alpine or not. He's got to put himself in the shop window, because I think that shop's basically closed now at Alpine, unfortunately.
Yeah, it would be a shame, because he's showing pace, but yeah, just needs to get that consistency, and I think that just comes from getting some races under your belt and building that confidence. Now, obviously, the other big talking point, which will be focused on this weekend, is the swap with Red Bull, Yuki Tsunoda and Liam Lawson. Now, Yuki, second race, and he gave Lawson 2. So can Tsunoda get into the points this week?
You would imagine so. I think Red Bull, by all reports, well, not all reports, according to Lando, he believes the Red Bulls will be pretty strong as they're really good in the slow speed stuff compared to McLaren. I don't know whether you call it unlucky in Japan, setup wise, and couldn't quite capitalise. So he'll definitely be looking to make amends.
Yeah, big race for Yuki. And same with Lawson. His return to Racing Bulls wasn't, I'd say it was pretty average. And we touched on the strategy just didn't work for him as well. But in relation to Hadjar, Hadjar put in a really great performance. So a little bit of pressure there for Liam because he needs to go back into that seat. Essentially, he needs to beat Hadjar. Or at least, be close, where it's just they're both battling hard. So I think a lot of pressure's on him.
I think Liam's going to do well this weekend. The noise is still there, but it's not as loud now. So he can sort of come in, get back on the money, which I think he will. It's time, right?
Yeah, it was only his first race back in the team, so got to give at least 2 races by Red Bull's logic. Now, probably one of the more experienced drivers where a little bit of pressure is building would probably be on Ocon. Old Esteban needs to show that he's the number 1 in that team.
Well, yeah, Behrman made him look very ordinary. He was brought in to be the like-for-like replacement for Hulkenberg. He's obviously struggling. He needs a strong performance there.
And I guess the other experienced driver that wants to, get the bad performances off his back would be old Carlos, and we've touched on him. It just seems that things aren't clicking. But I did read an article earlier where when you look at Carlos's history, he's a bit of a slow burner when he starts in a new team and then just builds in and eventually does get up to speed. And we expect that. Carlos is class.
Yeah, 100%. But I don't even think you can really expect anyone to get in a new car and dominate straight away. Carlos is a slow burn, and then you saw what he did towards the end of his time at Ferrari, where he was basically the number 1 driver. Not officially, but in terms of results, especially in his last season.
Yeah, I'm not worried about Carlos. I think just probably even within a few more races, like seat time, I think he'll be there with Albon and battling with Albon. All right, so what are your expectations for this weekend? Who do you see shining? Which teams do you think are going to bounce back? Has Red Bull really got the pace? Can Max win again?
I'm expecting a lot more exciting race, being a higher deg circuit. So I'm expecting at least a 2-stopper. McLaren need to put the thing on the front row. I think if Max is up the front, I think Max will walk away with it. I'm expecting Russell to be up there again. I think it'll be a lot better showing from him this weekend. So he's definitely in the mix. I'm probably going to say Piastri, Verstappen and Russell, my top 3. I still think that Mercedes car is one of the best cars on the grid at the moment.
Yeah, not a bad top 3 there. I'd agree with you there. It's so tight up there, and I agree. I think we get a much more exciting race this week than what we had last week. Looks like 2-stopper. If you base it on last year, there were 2 and 3 stoppers, right?
Yeah, last year was a 2-stopper. I think there was only 1 3-stopper.
Yep. So at least that strategy-wise throws things a little bit more dynamic.
Well, it makes for more exciting racing in the end, right? Having different teams on different drivers on different compounds rather than you just jump on the one tyre. Everyone's sort of on the same strategy. Everyone sort of pits around the same time. It just makes for more exciting racing. And there's definitely more overtaking opportunities in Bahrain than there was in Japan.
Yeah, definitely. And, if you look at recent memory, we've had some really great races there. Most notably, obviously, Nico and Lewis back in the early Mercedes days. And even, I think it was 2022, where it was a really great race between Max and Charles. Last year, Max won with Sergio second and Carlos in third. When you look back at last year where McLaren was, Lando Norris P6, 48 seconds behind Max, it's going to be a complete different situation this week, provided there's no DNFs, of course. My top 3, I'm going for Oscar Piastri because I think he's due for another big race, and I think he's due for an absolute cracking qualifying because he was on the ball last week, and it was just because of that one sector, just missed out. So I'm going Piastri, Verstappen, Norris for the top 3.
No, I can't disagree with that either. And I think being the place of testing, the teams are probably going to be even closer again. You would imagine with Red Bull bringing some minor little upgrades, I think they're going to be a lot closer. It's going to be a very rear limited race, just given the circuit characteristics. So I think traction is going to play a massive part. Yeah, I think it's going to be super close. I mean, I think it's going to be as close, if not closer than Japan.
Well, we're going to get a hot race anyway. Friday through to Sunday, they're looking at highs of 33 degrees pretty much across each day. All sunshine, no cloud cover. So that's going to be a hot track.
You would imagine that's going to suit McLaren going off the trend that we've kind of had, in the hotter conditions. McLaren seem to look after their tyres. I mean, we haven't really had a stinking hot race, so we don't really know yet. We haven't had temperatures that high.
I don't think we've had anything exceed 30 degrees yet, right?
No, exactly. China would have been probably the hottest. So tyre deg is going to be massive in this race as well. Pirelli have rated it quite high for track abrasion. Tyres are going to be a big factor, so it'll be interesting to see if Red Bull have got on top of those tyre wear issues. If they have, it's going to be close between Red Bull and McLaren.
Yeah, maybe we get a little bit of a shake up because I mean, when you look at the last 3 races, it hasn't really been super hot. But anyway, let's see what happens. Plenty to look at. FP1 will be interesting again with those new rookies coming in and getting their shot. Let's see how these upgrades go. And hopefully we can reconvene next week and discuss that we had one of the most exciting races in recent memory.
Fingers crossed.
Fingers crossed. Well, that's it for today. And we look forward to this weekend.
Catches.
Ciao.